G'day everyone and welcome to this week's edition of the Melbourne Pro Punters panel. As usual, Darren Potter.
Juppy.
Dan Kelly.
Hello, Juppy.
How are you, mate?
Good to have you back on board,
Yes, mate.
DK.
Been a little while through the carnival.
Yeah.
Post-carnival.
We've managed to survive. It was a very, very busy week out there. I've got no doubt they put a little bit of sugar on the top of some of the crowd numbers out there. But it was a pretty successful carnival. I think one where the punters might have come out slightly ahead, especially your punters, Pots.
Yeah, we didn't win heat. We had a really big lead and knocked a bit of it off late, but it was. I mean, we're around the money all week, and it's hard, you know. It's normally when I do one of my sets, I am extremely thorough about everything I do. On cup week, you have to do your best because there's so many horses, and you just run out of time. So you know,
I haven't been that way.
I haven't added it up. There must have been over the 4 days 500 horses.
Yeah, right, so Rolf put a figure on how many 596 horses he rode up or something. Same as you. Yeah.
Well, so it's a lot, but anyway, we did enough to win, and we've done enough to. From September 1, we've had a really strong period. I think we've won maybe 150 units since September 1, so that's been really good. You know, I'm glad to get through the spring with a profit. We've learned a heap of stuff.
Yeah.
You know, this is the first spring I've walked all the tracks.
Yep.
The longer I'm down in Melbourne, the more I'm learning about all these stables and their little tricks and things that you have to look for, and always talking to DK about some of the jockeys and you know their ups and downs and their strengths and weaknesses and stuff like that. So I think we're really well placed for the next 12 months. So
I think that's one thing. One of our previous guests, in Mick Goody, I think he did a magnificent job. I know there was some sections of the media that Brad Davison was one and whatnot that they were trying to find a reason to half pot him, but it just didn't work. I think that track played.
Shane died too, wasn't she?
Yeah.
Going about Shane Dye saying mad leaders when it wasn't.
Yeah.
No, I think there was a bit of confusion about what he was actually saying.
Okay.
I think what he was saying is on the Thursday, you're much better off racing on the fence. Now, maybe some of it got lost in translation. I think what he was saying is particularly on the turning part of the track, all the winners were whether they were forward, mid or back, they were racing on the fence. So if you were posted 3 or 4 wide on that turning part, you were just getting gassed.
Was that wind?
Right? So no, it wasn't. I walked the track the day before and it was just drier on the inside because it had been opened up and raced on. It was just firmer. And once you got sort of wider than 3 wide, the grass was a lot lusher and it was holding the irrigation. So I just think you were spending more petrol if you're wide.
Through that.
On the Saturday it was wind. It was all wind and it was blowing the inside horses out of play. So when you think about it though, the set of circumstances that Mick Goody's presented with there are incredibly difficult, and the results over the 4 days this week were of how the track race was massively better than last year. So last year's now completely put out of everyone's memory, and the hoo-ha about that aerovation of the outside 4 metres on Saturday was, geez, that was blown out of proportion. If people just go out there and have a look at it, we're talking about a very narrow strip. It's just the width of a small tractor.
Yep.
Okay, because it's the tractor drives up there a lot when they're doing a lot of irrigating, right?
Yep.
And it'd firm that area up. If he'd have left it, you would have had room for 1, probably 2 horses, no more than 2, no way. And it would have been worth 2 to 3 lengths. So you would have had all these fields fighting
over to get there.
You would have had Derby Day last year where we had the
which is on the opposite.
Yeah, it's just on the opposite fence.
Well, but on the inside, it's not great, but it's better.
Yeah.
Well, at least they're all there. But when it's the outside, and that rail's different because it's got all the roses and the crowd and stuff, and the horses don't really want to go near it. The jockeys are trying to force horses to go where they really don't want to go. So I just think. What everyone's got to remember is the track is 30 metres wide, the rail's at 3 metres, it's still 27 metres wide. He aerated a strip that was less than 4 metres, but let's even say 4 metres. It still leaves 23 metres of track, right?
There's plenty of room.
That's 8 metres wider than Moonee Valley is when it's rail true. Do you know what I mean? So there was plenty of track there, and it was the wide barriers were still advantaged in the down the straight races anyway. So I think there was a lack of context and understanding in some of the, I could understand people that drew wides, we're going to have the advantage here, and then they thought it was being taken away from them, but it wasn't really taken away from them. I think what Mick did was he prevented a dangerous situation developing. So, well done to Mick and all his team, Liam and all the boys.
Now, I think the next meeting though, Potts, we're going to have a different scenario there because he wasn't out there, but he was out there in spirit on Monday morning, DK. Great friend of the show, Paddy Bat.
Right.
I got to Flemington at 9:30 on Monday morning, ready to start moving stuff around, and they were already out there with the oxy torches and the angle grinders cutting up the rails. The Flemington bedding ring was coming down, much to the delight of Paddy Bat.
So what does this mean, Juppy? When we next return to Flemington, where will the bookies be?
Well, from what I've learnt is, the rail is moving to where the off-the-rail spot is, and behind that will be a hoarding board, but there'll be still some room for members there. And then I don't think there'll be any off-the-fence bookies. I don't know what they're going to do with them. There's not enough room.
So we're not putting them in. So we're not going to look after them. We're still going to leave them out.
Well, what happened was that originally, I think the original thought was they were going to move them upstairs into the forum, which they've done, as you remember, back in the past.
Back in our day.
Yeah, they used to put them up there. But apparently...
Well, apparently we had Flemington midweeks.
Yes, and even the Friday afternoon twilights we used to have there.
That's it.
But apparently a couple of the regular forum bookies threatened to sue, and it was going to be a bit of a problem.
So they pay money for those pictures, they pay money for those.
So, but the other thing we'll have to allow for there is if there's any wind that day, Potts, we've got a large windbreak that's been taken out of the way.
Yeah, well that will have an impact.
When's the next meeting? New Year's Day or something?
No, it's only 4 weeks Saturday.
Okay. So
we're back there reasonably quickly, and I'd imagine by that stage, at the rate they're going out there, that they'll have that stand nearly levelled by then. And
so normally when you often get the northwesterly wind,
and
the grandstand protects them, so that'll be very interesting. It'll be completely brand new next time that happens.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that by walking the track pots and being out there and sort of knowing it a little bit better than what some of the other punters will, it'll be a huge advantage.
Yeah.
I think because it might take a couple of meetings for them to get a handle on it. And I just hope we've got something there to control the dust too, because if that's the last thing we need is clouds of dust blowing up off the construction site.
Interesting stuff.
But nothing. I don't think anyone's going to particularly miss that member stand. There wasn't a whole lot in it. There was a couple of, I think it was 2 restaurants, a bar, and then other than that there was about 1,500 or 2,000 seats on it. Like, I think what they're going to put in place is going to be much better down the road, and the bookmakers ring will go inside at that stage, but on a much reduced scale, I'm led to believe, if there's any bookies left by then.
On one of those issues just touched on, Jumpy, I understand there was a bit of Twitter play about Shane Dye on Racing.com. To be honest, my personal opinion is, I actually found him refreshingly honest and forthright. You don't have to agree with everything he says, and I think he was quite upfront with the fact that he lives in Hong Kong and he's an expert more in the Hong Kong horses and doesn't know all these horses very well.
Yep.
But he gave his opinions really straight down the line, and he didn't care. He didn't worry about who he may or may not be potting, which, you know, for the most part of the mainstream media, what we get are people that are really scared of actually saying what they think.
Yeah,
so
he's quite vanilla.
Yeah.
So to have someone on there, whether you agreed with them or not, it's not really the point. The fact that he was prepared to have a go and say what he thought, I thought was great. So,
well, I was busy. The main one I caught him on was the 2-year-old odds-on of Hayes that stayed inside. Yeah. And he just went crook. He said, what was he doing staying inside? Well, what they always, you know, and then the outside horses had 6 links on them, you know.
Yeah.
And he really didn't hold back on that one, you know, even on the replays and everything. So.
And every other sport, Ralph says it too. Like in every other sport, you'd expect that. But the thing is, being at the track, I had no idea of any of that sort of coverage was happening, because you went from there were some areas where you were getting the Channel 7 coverage, some areas where you couldn't hear the race at all. There were
that was Cup Day. First race Cup Day, and at that stage, Betfair was in meltdown.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to get on the Betfair to lay modernity because I thought the inside gate could be an issue, and I just felt like there'd be one hidden there somewhere, like at $1.60 or whatever. I was prepared to, you know, get something out of it anyway.
How'd you go?
It didn't happen. I couldn't. Betfair just wasn't
winning. When Snow, I didn't mind Betfair going down, but I was like Snow. I got the shakes when went down. We just felt completely. Thank God it got up again after 30 minutes or something. But
so can I have a shout out to one of our really loyal and followers and former guest on the show, Rexy.
Yeah,
he was in complete meltdown with Betfair and Donny because.
If you think Rexy and DK were in meltdown, you should have seen the scurrying around in the ring.
Boy.
They did not know how to get home, some of those blokes. They were looking at one another and they didn't know what to do, and the percentage went up.
A bit 125 or something, something like that.
Everyone's just holding their hands up, looking at one another, going, what do we actually do here? The traders are sitting there scratching their head, they couldn't do anything.
I do what I did, because I still had some bets that I normally would have gone on the Betfair. I just put them on best take, because I thought this will confuse the market. And,
for sure.
And there was one there that paid like crazy overs on the tape. I can't think which horse it was, but it was like really big overs. It was It was Gay's thing, sought after. I think it might have been SP370 and paid about $480 on the on the toes.
Correct. Yeah.
Speaking of
whistling,
tote anomalies, we noticed that on the Melbourne Cup there were some opportunities there for the Arbors. We needed to back Hartnell back, and it was rock solid $6 on the fair. We had an offer up at $6.40 that didn't look like getting matched, and I think there was about 5 or 6 horses still not in the gates, and it was $7.20 on the tote, and you knew that pretty much no matter how much money they had, they probably weren't going to be able to shorten that up enough to bring it back in line with the Betfair price. So there was an earn there, and it's one of the few races a year when you can find something like that.
I want to say one of the features of the carnival was the spirit of betting. There was some outstanding betting there at the carnival. So the Cup first, like, I could not believe someone was willing to take 100 to 1 or whatever it was, Rose of Virginia, in the 60s. Like, I couldn't find a price big enough to put beside that horse. Like, it was just, I mean, that was the most bizarre move of the. There was a bunch of roughies in the Cup that might have been the Arbors. I'm not really quite sure.
Yeah.
But they were all like trimmed up, all that from triple figure odds into like 60s, and I'm just thinking, geez, there's an opportunity here for someone like one of our great friends, Michael Thomas, owner of Happy Clapper, former bookie, couldn't just help himself when he saw them. You could lay it about 70 to 1 on Betfair. He's pinned the ears back and closed his eyes and just said, I hope this is right.
Well, the same syndicate did the same thing with MT Source, Happy Clapper in the Cox Plate. They were the ones that took sort of everything from 100s down to about 60s because they knew that it didn't take a lot. It seems to me that they're working in that area of the market because it doesn't take a lot to make it completely collapse and you can get rid of it again.
And another great example of the betting over Cup Week was the very first race of the carnival, that coming through one.
Yeah.
I think it was a 10-horse field, and there was money for every runner, and there were some good horses in that race, and it was just a tug of war. It was like, normally there'd be a couple of victims that didn't have a price, and a horse like coming through would have started 7 to 2.
Yeah.
But because they were Bazelle and Morton's Fork, there was strong support for the stone runner. Like that was like really heavily backed at different points, and. Of course, Haydock, it was an obvious move, but the big teams wanted it in their side. And that's why a horse like coming through went around at close to $8. Amazing.
It
was great. I mean, when it's like that, and you could have had whatever you wanted on coming through on the fair. There was no point where you couldn't have had 1,000 on it at $8, really.
What about Francis of Assisi?
Frank!
Mate.
All you blokes, bet of the day. Price it up 6 to 4 or whatever your price. I bet accordingly. What was the last price you took, Pods? Did you keep going? Did you go on with it?
The last one I took was $6. But I only averaged $4.80.
Yeah,
but I mean, at the end,
you would have taken $3.50 or something first, or $3.80.
$3.70 was the first price I took, and when it won, I sort of said to myself, well, look, I've averaged $4.80 about a horse that was a good thing. So don't worry about it.
Yeah, probably had some more on it because you could get $6 at the death.
Yeah,
pay a little bit extra because you just say, this is.
Well, I did. I had the full bet. I didn't back off, which I could have backed off.
Yeah, so I did, but just I probably didn't have a handle on it. Big enough handle on it, the robots,
Well,
I think that's right. Because my reading of it was the first move was Robbie, and that sort of reset the market. So he must have marked Tom Melbourne like even money or something, and so he cleaned up the ring a bit, and then reset the market. And I expected it to really firm up late when some of the other teams chimed into it, but it just didn't really happen. It just sort of said said everyone's marked Tom Melbourne 5 to 4, the big teams, and they've all marked this 9 to 2 or something like that, and that was it. So I sat there but a funny story. It's quite funny. During the mounting yard, I've rewound a couple of times, and then I'm taking the $6 on the fair and everything, and I've not realised I'm 2 minutes behind time. So they've gone 200 metres out of the gates, and I start getting text messages saying, "You fucking beauty," sort of. So it was the easiest watch in the world. I got to watch the last 2,000 metres just knowing this horse is going to trot in, and I'm sitting there going, "Oh, it's so funny."
Well, he brained him at Bendigo, and he followed up again there at Foamington, and for mine, he's the horse that I'm going to follow out of the carnival, young Frank.
He's a 7-year-old, but geez, man, honestly, on those figures, he would have been competitive in the Melbourne Cup.
Yeah.
They said his figure was third to only whatever Hartnell and Winksor returned. It's the third for the spring.
Yeah, it was enormous. And
Well, enormous last furlong. Jesus.
Yeah.
I mean, he's only, the 300 he's only maybe a length in front of him, hitting the front, then he put 10 on the, I know Tom Melbourne's getting the stitch, but still.
And my horse to follow for the carnival's Charlie Appleby. Can we get him out here training? I mean, he's obviously getting the third stringers and just like gone running through brick walls. He'll do me, Charlie.
Yeah, well, I'll come back again.
And
plenty more.
Should Rick be a little bit upset that the Charlie's not leaving a few here for him to work with for next year? Or is it a shake right there to send him back with him and the other blokes I want to stick with are Willie Mullins and Tony Martin, because I reckon Heartbreak City's going to be a moral over hurdles next start.
Yeah, well, to answer your first question, if I was a shake, I'd give them all to Charlie. Just my opinion. Definitely. Look, I was doing a bit of a review last week. I'm pretty sure, like everyone knows I back more than one horse in a race, right? So it can be anywhere between 1 and 5, right? But with that approach, I've backed the last 12 Caulfield Cup winners.
Yeah.
But I've only backed 3 of the last 12 Melbourne Cup winners. So I've decided I need a completely fresh approach, tailored specifically for that race. So I'm looking forward to next year's Cup, when I can do it completely differently than what I have in the past. And I think it's become a race, this is going to sound weird, but it's almost like a maiden DK, where you've got to look for horses that are going to do something that they haven't done.
Yeah.
So,
if you're looking for horses to do something that they've done previously, it's too late. They're not going to. That's not going to win the Melbourne Cup anymore.
No, you see how Lloyd just hit Almanda down and he's listed in Group 3s.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got Jim Bowler and Malcolm McLaren there. They're planning this beat there to get him in. You know, so get him fit enough, get him in the prep runs. But you know, he was running around in whatever he was running, and they did that even by Bondi Beach had a horrible preparation over there. They was doing the same thing with him.
Yeah.
You know, and then to come out and then I don't know what figure he's run better than what he did before, but it's obviously 5 or 6 lengths or whatever he
4 lengths.
4 lengths, yeah. So that's the double improvement sort of thing.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, there's no one I've seen anywhere in the world better than Tony Martin beating the handicapper.
Well, when I think back on his one, like, when you watch that E-ball, I was just struck with how well that horse travelled.
Yeah.
And I should have tweaked then, you know what I mean? But I wasn't looking for the right kind of horse. It was my mistake. And I did fall in love with O'Shea for a bit. But
you get these take away the slowly run barrier trial last year, the protectionist good tempo race, margins, the good horse, the same thing, and the big margins this year, and the genuinely run, and the quality comes to them, although those horses said they come to the fore. Where last year, they were all getting knocked.
Yeah, well, last year's an anomaly. But the protectionist one is a horse that did something that he'd never done before, but he was exactly the right horse to do that.
Swept through in the lower grades and the old bowl around in the Hotham handicap, and don't worry about the Caulfield Cup going
There's something you bring up, DK, and this is something that I want to move towards. We've got the Campbell Stakes back now that it's the old Emirates. Can we call the Darlow and Lithgow again and bring back all the traditional names, please, and then just put the sponsor's name in front of it? I mean, it's not that hard.
Not ridiculous. The ridiculous one was the Optic Colgate. Chipping Norton or whatever it was. That was, that showed me the ridiculous of it. It should be the Colgate Optic Chipping Norton Stakes.
Well, it's the same. Speaking of ridiculous ideas, the blokes up there in Queensland who are moving the Doomben 10,000 Eagle Farm.
Aren't they flying up there?
Yeah. I mean...
sorry, Jumpy, I just want to cover off on that subject you raised for. The Tony Martin one I think is really interesting from a Melbourne Cup point of view. So there's a guy that probably doesn't... Like, he's from Ireland, regularly competing with Aidan O'Brien and Joseph and all the other teams from Ireland that get the really expensive horses. So to compete with those stables that have got all the weapons, you've got to be very clever. Very clever and very good at doing that and getting your horses in at the right weight and stuff like that. So I would think stables like that will know the right horses to bring, and they'll be very dangerous.
Give them the right prep. Apparently he's a very good target trainer. And then they back it. Apparently they have a bet too, but he's very good at targeting, get him in, and then they bet. Which is exactly what he did with that horse.
I believe Heartbreaks. It ran in the Galway Hurdle, did it not?
Yeah, it ran in a couple of hurdles.
I think it's one at Galway, and Galway's their biggest. Like, Galway comes the week after Cheltenham, and it's almost the Irish equivalent, and that's where some of the biggest betting of the year happens. So to try and get it into a feature race at Galway, they know they're going to be able to get on, and that's all part of it. Because the prize money, let's face it, it's not worth a heap. But if you can then back it to win your maximum, then they're flying and they're getting in with the right weights. And the other thing is...
So I think in the future, you've got to identify both the right horses, the ones that have got that... unfulfilled talent and the right yards.
Yeah.
That exactly that profile that you're referring to, Juppy, that understand what it takes to get that sort of to keep that back, produce it at the right time.
Well, my other question is, how many more runnings of the Melbourne Cup do I need to witness before I eventually see Frankie ride a winner?
No, I don't know.
Don't know if he will.
So there's a fair chance that I'm not going to see it in my lifetime.
Unless Willie Mullins sticks with him and Willie's going to challenge him, you know. It's too good not to.
But he has slaughtered a few in the Cup over the journey, hasn't he?
That was a different one. Look at Moreira's ride on Heartbreak City and his ride. A bit of difference in that anyway.
Imagine that. All right, that'll do us for part one. We'll be back in a moment with part two.